In the middle of class, my teacher slipped a folded note onto my desk. I opened it with shaky hands, and it said only 6 words. Leave through the back door now. My heart jumped into my throat. I didn't know why, but I trusted her and walked out. Minutes later, the principal entered with 2 police officers, and the entire classroom erupted into chaos. Before I share what really happened that day, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. This is a story you won't forget. My name is Liana, and at the time I was 16 years old, sitting in my English class on what I thought was going to be an ordinary Thursday morning. I wasn't the kind of student who wanted attention. I usually sat in the second row, kept my head down, and focused on my notes. School wasn't perfect, but I always felt like Ms. Avery's classroom was a safe place. She was one of the few teachers who treated me with kindness, who noticed when something was wrong, even if I didn't say a word. That morning, I had woken up feeling restless. At home, things were heavy. My mom worked double shifts at the hospital and barely had time to rest. My older sister Maya was in college, but she called me almost every night to check in. She was my anchor, the one who always reminded me that I wasn't as invisible as I felt. Before I left for school that day, she had said on the phone, "Just get through your classes, Lee. You're stronger than you think." I carried those words with me into the classroom. But something was different that day. From the moment the bell rang, Ms. Avery seemed tense. She glanced at the clock more than usual, her eyes flicking toward the door as if she were waiting for something to happen. At first, I thought maybe she was nervous about a surprise classroom observation, or worried about an announcement. But when I caught her eye, she gave me a look I couldn't read, a mix of urgency and worry. I tried to push the unease aside and focus on the lesson. My pen scratched across the notebook, the words on the board blurring as my mind drifted. Then, out of nowhere, Miss Avery walked down the aisle and paused at my desk. She slipped a folded piece of paper onto my book and whispered, "Read it now." I looked up at her in confusion, but her eyes were steady, firm, and serious. That was when my stomach tightened, because I realized whatever was happening wasn't about the lesson, it was about me. When I unfolded the note and read the words, "Leave through the back door now," my heart hammered so loudly, I thought everyone around me could hear it. For a second, I froze, unsure if I should obey. It felt unreal, like something out of a movie. Students were busy scribbling notes, whispering to each other, completely unaware of what had just been placed in my hands. I looked up at Ms. Avery, hoping for some explanation, but she had already turned back toward the front of the room. Her face was tight, her jaw set. That was when I knew this was serious. I slid my notebook closed, stuffed the note into my pocket, and quietly gathered my things. My chair squeaked against the floor, and I winced, praying no one would notice. A few heads turned, but I forced myself to walk calmly toward the back of the classroom. My legs felt weak, like they might give out any moment. When I pushed the back door open, the cool air in the hallway hit me, and I finally let out the breath I had been holding. I didn't run, but every step felt heavy as I moved down the hallway toward the stairwell. I had no idea what I was walking away from. My mind raced through questions. Was there a fire drill? A lockdown? Did something happen to me specifically? Why me and not anyone else? I found a corner near the stairwell and crouched low, hugging my bag to my chest. My hands were trembling. I tried to listen, straining to catch any sound from the classroom. At first, there was silence, just the faint hum of the air vents. Then, I heard the door to the classroom swing open. The sound of firm footsteps echoed down the hallway. I peeked around the corner, and that's when I saw them. Principal Harris, walking briskly with 2 uniformed police officers right behind him. Their expressions were grim, focused. They weren't there for a routine visit. Something was very, very wrong. They turned into my classroom. Almost immediately, the quiet hum of the school erupted. I heard chairs scrape across the floor, gasps, and voices rising in shock. My classmates sounded confused, panicked, some of them shouting questions. The officers barked commands, their voices sharp and commanding. I pressed my back against the wall, my breath shallow, too afraid to move. Inside the room, someone yelled, and then there was a loud thud, like a desk had been shoved. The chaos grew louder, overlapping voices, my classmates' reactions blurring into noise I couldn't make sense of. My stomach twisted. Whatever was happening in there, I was supposed to be kept away from it, and that terrified me more than anything. I gripped my phone in my pocket, tempted to call my sister Maya, but my hands shook too much to dial. If I told her right now, she would panic, and I didn't even have answers to give. Instead, I sat frozen, waiting for the storm to pass. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the sounds began to settle. Doors slammed, footsteps echoed again. This time, I saw the officers leading a student down the hallway between them. His wrists were cuffed, his face twisted with anger as he shouted back toward the classroom. My stomach dropped when I recognized him. It was Jason, a boy from my grade who had made my life miserable since freshman year. He had teased me, spread rumors, and cornered me in the halls more times than I wanted to remember. I had always thought of him as just another bully, mean but harmless. Seeing him in handcuffs with the police at his side shattered that illusion in an instant. I ducked back, into the shadows before anyone could notice me, but my mind raced. Why was Jason being arrested? Why had Ms. Avery specifically told me to leave before it happened? Did she know he would lash out at me? The officers marched Jason down the hallway, his shouts growing fainter until they disappeared around the corner. My classmates spilled into the hallway moments later, buzzing with confusion and excitement, their voices overlapping in a wave of gossip. Did you see that? They just took Jason away. Why were the cops here? Nobody seemed to have answers, only questions. I stayed hidden until the crowd thinned. My heart was still racing and my head felt light, like I was floating outside of myself. I knew one thing for sure. Ms. Avery hadn't acted randomly. She had saved me from being in that classroom when Jason was taken away. And the way he had shouted and struggled told me that if I had been there, his anger might have turned on me. Fear and confusion tangled inside me. I wanted to run home, to call Maya, to let her comfort me, but I also knew I couldn't avoid this. Whatever was going on, it was connected to me. That note wasn't a coincidence. Ms. Avery had protected me from something I didn't yet understand. As the hallway quieted again, I pressed my hand over my chest, trying to calm the wild rhythm of my heartbeat. I whispered to myself, why me? What did he do? But deep down, I already sensed the answer. Jason's arrest wasn't just about him. Somehow, it had everything to do with me. When the last echoes of chaos faded down the hallway, I slipped out of my hiding spot, my knees weak and my palms clammy. I felt like I had just watched my entire world tilt sideways. Jason, the boy who had made me feel small and powerless for years, had been dragged out of class in handcuffs. I should have felt relief, maybe even a grim satisfaction. Instead, I was trembling. My teacher had warned me to leave before it happened, as if she knew something I didn't. I needed answers, and I knew only one person could give them. I clutched my backpack straps tightly and walked quickly through the halls, hoping no one would stop me. My classmates were still buzzing with gossip, some pulling out their phones, others whispering loudly about Jason's arrest. I kept my head down, slipping past them until I reached the teacher's offices. And there she was, Miss Avery, standing near the door, speaking in hushed tones with another staff member. She spotted me instantly, and her face tightened with worry. Liana, she said softly, motioning me over. I told you to go home. My voice cracked. Why? What was happening? Why did you want me out of the classroom? She glanced around nervously, as if making sure no one else was listening. Then she lowered her voice. It wasn't safe for you to be in there. I can't tell you everything right now, but you have to trust me. Jason was dangerous. He could have turned on you the moment. The officers walked in. The words made my skin prickle. Why me? What do you mean he would have turned on me? Ms. Avery sighed heavily, like the weight of the world was pressing on her shoulders. Because he has a history with you. He's targeted you before. The principal was worried that if you were in the room, he'd lash out in front of everyone. I felt my stomach twist. So you knew this was going to happen? You knew they were coming for him? She nodded slightly. I overheard enough to understand. I couldn't risk you being caught in the middle. That's why I gave you the note. Her words sank into me like ice. All this time, I thought Jason's bullying was just mean jokes, nasty comments, and intimidation. I never imagined it was serious enough for police involvement. And the idea that Ms. Avery had singled me out to protect me because she believed I was in danger made me realize how close I had been to something worse than embarrassment or rumors. I wanted to ask more, to demand every detail, but Ms. Avery pressed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Go home, Liana. Talk to your family. You don't need to be here right now. The softness in her voice scared me more than if she had yelled. I nodded numbly, then left the school grounds, my feet carrying me automatically toward home. The moment I walked through the door, Maya was waiting. She must have sensed something was wrong because she immediately asked, "What happened? You sound shaken." I dropped my bag and sat at the kitchen table, my hands trembling. Jason got arrested. In class. The police came in, and Ms. Avery made me leave before it happened. Maya's eyes widened. Arrested? What for? I shook my head. I don't know. No one's saying anything, but Ms. Avery told me it wasn't safe for me to be in there. She said he might have lashed out at me. Maya's protective side flared instantly. That boy has been tormenting you for years. If the police took him away, it must be serious. Did you tell Mom? No, I admitted. She's at work. I don't want to worry her until I know what's going on. Maya sat across from me, leaning forward. Then we'll figure it out together. But you can't ignore this, Lee. If Ms. Avery thought you were in danger, you probably were. We need to find out the truth. Her determination gave me a little strength. I nodded. I want answers too. I can't stop thinking about why she warned me. What did Jason do? Why did the police come today of all days? We sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the refrigerator filling the space. Finally, Maya spoke again. You should go back tomorrow. Ask the right questions. Talk to Miss Avery again. If there's something bigger going on, you deserve to know. The thought of walking back into school the next day made my stomach turn. But she was right. I couldn't hide from this. I couldn't pretend it was just a bad day that would pass. Something had happened that involved me directly, and pretending otherwise would only leave me vulnerable. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I replayed the events over and over. The way Ms. Avery's face tightened as she slipped me the note. The look on Jason's face as the police dragged him out. The noise of my classmates as the room erupted in shock. None of it made sense. But one thing was clear. Ms. Avery had risked her job to protect me. and I wasn't going to let that go without finding out why. By morning, my fear had shifted into resolve. I was done being scared of shadows. I was going to face this head on, and whatever truth was waiting, I needed to be ready for it. The next morning, walking into school felt like stepping into a storm I wasn't ready for. Everyone was buzzing with rumors about Jason's arrest. Some students whispered in corners, their voices full of shock and excitement. Others scrolled through their phones, passing around blurry videos taken during the commotion. My stomach turned every time I caught a glimpse of Jason's angry face on their screens. Nobody seemed to know the full story, but one thing was clear. Yesterday had changed everything. I tried to ignore the stares as I walked down the hallway. My heart pounded against my chest. I wasn't even sure if I wanted answers, but I knew I needed them. Ms. Avery was in her classroom, organizing papers at her desk. When she looked up and saw me, her expression softened, but her eyes still carried the weight of something heavy. "Liana," she said quietly. "Come in." Close the door, I obeyed, sliding into the front row seat. My hands clenched together tightly. "Please," I whispered. "I need to know the truth. Why did you warn me? Why me?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the door as if making sure we were alone. Finally, she leaned forward, her voice low but steady. "Because Jason wasn't just a bully. He crossed a line, and the police had been gathering evidence for weeks. Yesterday was the day they came for him, and I knew if you were in that room, he would have exploded at you." My chest tightened. Exploded at me? But why? What did he do? Ms. Avery's eyes were full of concern. Jason had been caught sending threatening messages online, not just to random students, specifically about you. They found posts and private messages where he talked about hurting you. The principal didn't tell the class because it was part of an investigation, but I couldn't let you sit there while they walked in to arrest him. I couldn't risk what he might do if he saw you in that moment. Her words hit me like a physical blow. My ears rang and my vision blurred as I tried to process it. All the times Jason had teased me, shoved me in the hall, whispered cruel things. It had always felt like cruel high school behavior. Annoying, hurtful, but this was more than that. He had been serious. He had been planning something. "I didn't know," I said weakly, my voice breaking. "I thought he just hated me for no reason." Ms. Avery shook her head. "No, Liana. It went beyond hate. He was obsessed with controlling you, humiliating you, making you feel powerless. And when you didn't break, when you kept showing up anyway, he grew angrier. That's why the police got involved." Tears stung my eyes. Suddenly, all those little moments, his mocking laugh in the hall, the way he sometimes followed me after school, the cruel notes left in my locker, took on a new, darker meaning. He hadn't just been playing around. He had been building towards something dangerous. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Because the investigation had to stay quiet," Ms. Avery explained gently. "The police needed to catch him in the act, but I couldn't let you sit there, unaware of the risk. So I wrote that note. I knew you'd trust me enough to leave trust." That single word made my throat tighten. She had put everything on the line for me, trusting I would listen without question. And because of that, I was safe. At that moment, the door opened, and Principal Harris stepped in. His stern expression softened when he saw me. "Liana, I know you've been through a lot these past 2 days. I want you to hear it directly from me. Jason was arrested because he posed a real threat. We found evidence not only of his bullying, but of planned violence. You were his main target. If Ms. Avery hadn't acted the way she did, yesterday could have ended very differently." My knees felt weak, and I gripped the edge of the desk for balance. "So, I really was in danger." "Yes," the principal confirmed, his tone unusually gentle. "But you're safe now. He won't be coming back here." The relief that washed over me was overwhelming. My chest rose and fell with shaky breaths, and I felt tears spill down my cheeks. Ms. Avery stood and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to carry this fear anymore. You were brave, and you listened. That made all the difference." For the first time, I truly understood the weight of what had happened. It wasn't just about a teacher's note or a classroom disruption. It was about a life that could have spiraled into tragedy. Ms. Avery's quick action had protected me, and the police had finally stopped someone who had been hurting me for far too long. When I walked out of that room, the hallway felt different. The whispers and stares no longer pierced me. I wasn't just the quiet girl who had been bullied. I was the girl who had survived something darker than anyone around me knew. And while part of me still felt scared, another part finally felt free. The hours and days after Jason's arrest felt surreal. The school was buzzing with rumors, but I moved through the halls as if I were in a fog. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, but no one knew the full truth. Some kids whispered that he had been caught cheating. Others claimed he brought something dangerous to school, and a few said he was in a fight with the wrong person. Nobody guessed the reality, that his anger, his cruelty, and his obsession had all been focused on me, and I didn't correct them. Not yet. At home, Maya became my anchor. She sat with me at the kitchen table night after night, listening as I tried to piece together everything Ms. Avery and Principal Harris had told me. "You didn't imagine it," she reminded me gently. "Every time you felt unsafe, every time you told me he was crossing a line, you were right. You were in danger, and now you're free of him." Those words gave me comfort, but they also made me angry. For so long I had convinced myself I was overreacting, that Jason's behavior was just high school cruelty. I blamed myself for being too sensitive, too quiet, too easy to pick on. Now I realized I had been minimizing something that was real, something dangerous. I promised myself I would never doubt my instincts like that again. School eventually settled into a strange calm. Jason's absence left a gap in the hallways, one that felt both unsettling and relieving. I no longer had to glance over my shoulder, bracing for his mocking laugh or cruel comments. For the first time in years, I could walk to class without fear twisting my stomach, but the shadow of what almost happened stayed with me. One afternoon, I found myself back in Miss Avery's classroom. The sunlight streamed across the desks, and for the first time, the room felt peaceful again. She was grading papers, but when she saw me at the door, she smiled warmly. "How are you holding up, Liana?" she asked. I walked in slowly, my voice soft but certain. "I just wanted to say thank you. For that note, for thinking of me when everything happened. You saved me." Her expression grew serious. She set down her pen and said, "You don't owe me thanks. Any teacher would have done the same." But I shook my head. "No, you listened to your instincts. You trusted me to listen to you. If I had stayed in that room, I don't know what would have happened. You gave me a chance to walk away." She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes kind but heavy with the knowledge of what could have been. "Then let's both remember this, Liana. When something feels wrong, you don't ignore it. You act. That's what keeps you safe." That conversation stayed with me. It wasn't just about Jason anymore. It was about life. I realized that danger doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, in a classmate's cruel words, in a look that lingers too long, in the uneasy feeling that something isn't right. Too often we dismiss those signs. But the truth is, those instincts are warnings we need to trust. At home that night, Maya hugged me tightly. "You're stronger than you think," she whispered. And for the first time, I believed her. Surviving this didn't make me weak. It showed me the strength I didn't know I had. In the weeks that followed, I found myself walking with more confidence. I spoke up more in class. I started joining my sister on evening calls, telling her not just about my worries, but also about the small victories, like reading out loud in front of the class or raising my hand when I knew the answer. The fear was still there, but it no longer defined me. Looking back now, I see the note Ms. Avery gave me as more than just a warning. It was a lifeline. 6 words that told me my safety mattered, that I wasn't invisible, and that someone was watching out for me. Those 6 words taught me a lesson I will carry forever. Trust your instincts and trust the people who prove they care for you. If there's one thing I want others to take from my story, it's this. You don't have to face fear alone. Sometimes the people around you can see danger before you do, and when they step in to protect you, listen. It might just save your life. Thank you for being with me through this story. What would you have done if your teacher slipped you a note telling you to leave? Comment below where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that will keep you thinking long after they're over.